Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere. I appreciate it. Today, we're going to be covering the latest updates and talk of the Dylan Rounds case provided by Candice Cooley's most recent interview on Doug's channel, No Thanks. We're going to be analysing it. I have noted down key points and we're going to read them. We're going to try and understand, see if there's any contradictions, any lies, maybe by Candice Cooley or somebody else. Time will tell, right? If you want to check out the original video, feel free to do so. I guess I can provide a link down below. Also, if you haven't already, feel free to check out my previous video I did covering the Dylan Rounds case, a discussion, okay? And as we do go along in this video, feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, and reactions as we go along, okay? And you can talk about other things in between. In addition, later on in this video, if you stick around long enough, we'll also take a brief look at Corbin's re-emergence, at least on my channel recently, okay? And we'll talk a bit about that, because as some of you will know, Corbin has gone quiet in recent time. I can't remember how long for, a few weeks or so, but it looks like he's popped back up. So we'll be more of that later on in this video. But first of all, we need to take a look at the latest updates and I guess information cleared up to disperse all the confusion going on throughout time in the case, okay? So to start off with, in the interview, Candice Cooley stated it, and she actually repeated it later on in the live stream interview, that there is only one suspect, no one else, no other evidence pointing to anybody else. It's just Brenner, right? And understandably, we may have heard that at times. Other times, though, she suggested or hinted at the possibility someone else could be involved, but there wasn't evidence to prove that, but it was a possibility, right? So I can understand why some humans, maybe right now, or at least previously, may have been a bit confused, thinking, wait, has Candice Cooley contradicted herself? Is she switching and changing? I mean, in a way, yes, but I guess if you're thinking of more recent time with more developments going on and stuff happening behind the scene, progression made, it might just be things being reinforced in the background that it's only Brenner, right? It's one way of looking at it. I know it seemed maybe early on Candice Cooley was quite focused on it being Brenner and only Brenner, and I know Joseph Lloyd has repeated and quoted her several times now, but I'd say just recently, I'd say there's been a level of consistency, a very short span of it, where Candice Cooley has just said Brenner's responsible, right? She hasn't switched and changed as much just recent about the possibility somebody else could be involved, okay? The last time she did was, I don't know, maybe a month ago, maybe a bit longer, where she was talking about the only possibility to why Dylan wouldn't be in this area is if someone else helped to move Dylan elsewhere, further afar. But she was basing it on a condition, not a fact, not a piece of evidence that has emerged. She was just suggesting it, right? Just like how I might have suggested certain ideas and theories throughout the case. Not that all that was said did happen. Some of it may have done, others just faded out because it was an idea and that was all. And I guess in recent time, those ideas by Candice Cooley, possibilities of others out there responsible has faded with time in a way. I guess you could argue that. So that's why she's just firm on one person being involved. You can leave your thoughts down below to what you think. We don't need to do a poll about this, but just let me know your thoughts about there only being one suspect and only one person responsible for all this. And if that truly was the case, then you would assume that Brenner as well was the one responsible for throwing the phone into Lucin Pond, returning the gun and key fob back as well, and some other bits and bobs in between. And in terms of Brenner's pattern of behaviour, that would seem a bit odd. Some of it was maybe thought through, others not so much. Returning items back at a scene of a crime or near to a scene of a crime isn't the smartest of things. But then again, if Brenner isn't that smart, it could reinforce that point. But the fact that Dylan still has not been found yet, from the looks of it, Brenner must have been smart in disposing of Dylan, you could argue, right? So it's kind of weird to try and envision, right? Brenner doing it all. But if that's the way it's going, that's the way it's going. I mean, if in time there can be evidence released publicly which can highlight and suggest, reveal, that Brenner is the only one, then that will of course help, but it's not happened yet. The only other side thing that would definitely help and clear up confusion and suspicion with others would be those lie detector test results being revealed and the questions to whom those people lied in response to the questions, right? So like Chase Venstra, Brenner, well, he's an obvious one, but you get what I'm saying, right? Chase Venstra, supposedly innocent, not mentioned in a bad way by Candice Cooley, almost seen as an okay person, right? With an alibi as well, and yet there's still failed a question in the lie detector test. So it would just be useful if that polygraph test, right, was revealed, or at least a question to which he failed to. If the question was about Dylan and he failed it, if the question's got nothing to do with Dylan and he failed it, then it's not that bad, right? And I'll just briefly talk about it now, because I'm just trying to think, has Candice Cooley ever talked about the polygraph test of these individuals participating? I have heard about it taught on other channels, the Shack Ladies channel and others. Did these lie detector tests truly happen with all these individuals? And was it all to do in response to the Dylan Rounds case, yes or no? Or was it to do with their own separate crimes they might have got involved with? That's all I want to know, because we can always keep bringing up the polygraph test results of these individuals, but it's not really been talked about by Candice Cooley, or at least rediscussed in recent times. So just trying to understand where we're at there, right? But let's just put that aside, because that's only the first question, okay? We still have many more points to get through, right? So the next key bullet point mentioned in this interview with Doug and Candice Cooley was that there's no other connections with any other missing people in, I guess it was worded as Utah, right? That's what Candice Cooley said. So if you interpret it like that, I know there'll be other missing people out there I'm not aware of, but the obvious other case, Aidan Clune, as you know, 19-year-old. I don't know if he's 20 now, but basically around the same age as Dylan Rounds, okay? In the same area, kind of, there's a mileage in between the two, but I can understand why people would piece those two guys together, right? And then like when they were pushing the theories in the past about possibly being gay or being around people that might be into cross-dressing, that's why those connections were established, right? Kurt supposedly cross-dressing, Dylan accused of being gay, Aidan supposedly having a cross-dressing app, so you'd piece it together like a triangle. That's just, I guess, one of the reasons to why people were associating connections, right? And there might be others as well in between. But basically, from what Candice Cooley has said, there's no links, right? Separate cases, families still suffering here and there, but they're just separate, and that's it. So does that dispel everything? Does it clear everything up? I mean, you could argue, how does Candice Cooley know that none of it's connected, right? You know what I'm saying? I guess the way I would word it is, yeah, okay, I can understand maybe Dylan not being associated with any other missing people, but there's a possibility that the other missing people out there might be connected with one another. Not with Dylan, but with one another. I guess you just got to take in mind the location, locations of where this stuff is taking place. Is it in a small area, close proximity, or is it spread afar? If it's spread afar from different counties, maybe there's not much of a link. And you look at crime rates, you look at, is there any groups out there, drug related or kidnapping, trafficking, you know, all kinds of dodgy stuff like that, right? I mean, as for news articles we've read in the past, there's been all kinds of stuff happening, and we will get into that later because there is a possible lie made by Candice Cooley. We'll address that shortly, right? Next point, Candice Cooley was linking it on by saying that the people that tie the cases together are just doing it for more views. How does that make sense? Well, you can tie cases together to make it maybe a bit more interesting or controversial, so it brings in the certain audience. But another method to why people will do it is because, aside from genuinely believing that there is an actual link, some will do it just because one missing person is more important than the other missing person. One gets more views, more audience than the other. So, being realistic, Dylan Round's coverage will yield more views, as you've seen on other people's channels, in comparison to Aidan Clune, right? Aidan Clune isn't as popular, okay? It's more niche. So if you're going to cover it, you're probably going to have a smaller audience and crowd. The people that don't like that will end up, not everyone, but some will end up linking and tying both names together in the same sentence or in the same sentence when you're talking, right? And they'll probably put maybe Dylan's name first, then Aidan's. But this is the thing, this is where the misunderstandings can take place. There'll be some genuine people out there that may have noticed similarities, right, between the two. Maybe not right now, but maybe in the past, or for some reason in the future, they pick up on stuff, or they might even just do a contrast between the two. And that's why they include them in the titles or in the thumbnails, because at the end of the day, you know, you can either be accused for doing this, wording it like that for views, or if you don't do that, then you'll be accused of clickbait because you basically disguised the title or the thumbnail as something else to avoid being accused of doing it for views, but now you're being called out for clickbait because it's not related to what you're talking about. So that's where you're kind of in a lose-lose situation, right? So things can get messy, of course, but you know, you just have to be careful with wording at the end of the day. But of course, not many humans can do that, at least on YouTube speaking, okay? What was the next point talked about? Yeah, this one wasn't mentioned directly, but I've got an understanding of who it's aimed and directed at. Candice Cooley was bringing up, you know, not names of individuals, but just people vaguely, spreading misinformation, causing trouble, causing issues to the case. And basically, Candice Cooley was calling out Salty Pancakes to do with that silly farming simulator conspiracy theory, okay? I genuinely can't remember what it was all about, but I think someone relayed it on, or Pancakes may have brought up in one of his streams at some point where Dylan was known for playing farming simulator, but I don't know how that applies to his disappearance. But basically, Candice Cooley said when Dylan Rounds last played Farming Simulator, he did actually play it, was when he was aged 12 years old. And that was it. After that, he was doing real life farming. So I guess that clears up some small little conspiracy, right? You know, debunking it, I guess. Let me know your thoughts. What's the next one? Oh yeah, it was Candice Cooley addressing accusations, supposedly with a person on YouTube who has the same name or surname as Candice Cooley or something, and other channels, which I guess Candice Cooley was directing at maybe Pancakes, associating one YouTuber with Candice Cooley being a part of the family, some kind of corruptness going on, some kind of biasness, controlling the narrative, you know, all that kinds of bits and bobs. And Candice Cooley, after that sentence, roughly quoting, brought up Sleuth Mom. Sleuth Mom. Has anyone heard of that channel? I have. here and there, but I've never really been on their channel, okay? But I think when we did look at the Dylan Rounds discussion video last night, and we're looking on that forum page, someone did share a link, a video, and it was from the channel Sleuth Mom. So there you go, there's a little reference point. Does Sleuth Mom continue to cover the Dylan Rounds case? Not that I know of. Majority of videos in recent time are all uploaded by me when you check the relevancy and change the date, of course. But I think there was some talks about Candice Cooley saying either some video or some interview, some talk was done with the Sleuth Mom, but not with maybe Pancakes, and then Pancakes may have felt jealous and got in a bit of a whiny mode and started coming up with conspiracies. Why is Sleuth Mum getting this access, but I'm not? Is Sleuth Mum in on it? Is she a part of the family or something, getting early access to things? Yeah, all messy stuff like that, tying one thing to another, and then it gets out of hand. Maybe a bit of paranoia sets in, and it doesn't really do much good, right? So an example like that, and many other things elsewhere going on, is what's filled in the noise within the Dylan Rounds case. And of course, it's been worded maybe by Candice Cooley. I've worded it myself, but I've even worded it in the past years ago, that at times noise is good, but when you get all this other noise, the issues and the problems and the confusion, that doesn't help. I mean, it might yield a response at some point where people do answer back and clear things up, clear up the BS, set the record straight, kind of like maybe how Candice Cooley did in this recent interview video, right? I don't know if these YouTubers and people are directly spreading misinformation, creating misinformation to get a response from Candice Cooley to speed up the process in actually getting answers. I don't know if they're actually consciously thinking of that, or that's just what's indirectly happening, but I can see both sides, right? In a way, these people being prats and idiots at times and causing trouble, whilst it's not helping the case, it might speed up or force someone within, such as Candice Cooley, to speak out public and give a bit of an update. Whereas if you didn't have all this trouble and drama going on in the background, then maybe there would be more silence strained out, which I guess some people will say is a good thing in itself. Other people will say there's no need in having to force somebody to speak out. They will speak when they're ready. But, you know, in a bit of an awkward kind of positive way, there's been small positives with these prats in the background, because it's yielded the odd few responses here and there along the way, which has cleared stuff up. So the times where I've been a bit confused, or I felt, what about this compared to that? That's different to that, to this. And then a new video comes out, maybe on Doug's channel, or maybe on Chris's channel at some point in the past, or even East Idaho News, and it clears up, disperses a wave of confusion. Sure, there might be more ahead, but then that's eventually cleared up, right? Do I feel that in this interview, a lot of the stuff I was confused with previously has been cleared up here today? Can't quite come to that conclusion yet. We need to continue reading and analysing the key points from this interview, okay? So, brief little drink break, okay? Basically, welcome if you've just joined, okay? If you want to carry on watching live, feel free to do so. If you want to rewind to the beginning, you can do that as well, or you can even do that at the end of this video just to catch up on. Either way, okay? This is like an analysis, summary of this recent update by Candice Cooley, this interview with Doug from No Thanks, okay? So let's move on. Candice Cooley talking about dispelling the claims of forcing Dylan out there in Lucin. So we have heard it here and there, but I guess maybe it's fallen on deaf ears with time. But Candice, you know, you would have heard it yourself, maybe on other channels where people kept forcing that narrative. And I think Candice Cooley was, yeah, it was obvious. Candice Cooley was aiming this towards Jim Terry, who's been pushing the narrative that the family don't care about Dylan and forced him out there, maybe because of other reasons, you know, like the fairies and dodgy stuff there with relationships and stuff. May have felt ashamed, disappointed. But this is the thing. if Dylan was forced out there and he didn't want to, then why did he not just run away for good? If he was allowed to be out there freely, even though he may have not wanted to, let's just say, but he was out there freely, you'd think by then he just would have thought, well, I'm off, okay? I'll do this custom farming, but I'm not going to put the money into this farming business. I'm just going to run away now because I don't want to be controlled anymore. Yet he never did that, and he was living freely. You get what I'm saying? And if we did have any issues, then maybe he could have like reached out to maybe people in Montello, but may have been a bit closer to them more, though he wasn't, right? And he still visited the family, Justin's house, Candice Cooley's household, the family, and do like a triangular motion going round in a certain cycle, right? If it was that bad and he didn't like how the family treated him in the first place, then he wouldn't be visiting back, would he? He'd be no contact, keeping away from them at all times. That didn't happen, right? He still communicated. So that's one way of looking at it, but it wasn't like that. So just to reiterate, Candice Cooley dispelled the claims of Dylan being forced out there. Dylan went out there because he wanted to, because he was passionate about farming and the land was cheaper there, supposedly. Okay? Let me know your thoughts down below. Next point, and this was a new one to me, something I've not really heard of before, okay? It's a bit more specific, this. It's to do with the grandpa of Dylan Rounds, which is Larry Rounds, partnered up with Dylan, and Dylan paid half of the money to buy the farm. I guess 50-50 in payments, I assume. The way it's been worded in the past, from really the only source I heard it from, which was that old forum page which we've been going through over time, like last night. And the discussions there by those people was we'll call him grandfather, it's easier saying that. The grandfather, Larry, had about, 470 acres or something, and gave some to Dylan. No, it wasn't like that. Candice Cooley said the grandfather and Dylan partnered up together equally. Okay, so I guess with Dylan missing now, the grandfather is kind of in control of it to an extent. What will the grandfather do with it? Will he sell his, do you call it share, sell his ownership of it and pass it on to someone else? Don't know, but as Candice Cooley has said previously, she's not thinking of selling the place at this moment in time. The focus is on finding Dylan, and then I guess time will tell then. But it provides a different perspective because I've never heard that before. Let me know if you've heard about it with Dylan paying half. I mean, how did Dylan have half the money to begin with? I don't know the actual cost of this, this farm, how much it costs in general, the land. But maybe if Dylan was doing custom farming before that, maybe he saved up, right? Maybe he's been saving up since he was younger. If he's all about farming and he knows that he needs money to be able to do this and that, maybe he just didn't really buy too much. That's another way of looking at it. But let's just move on to the next point. Candice Cooley saying, right, okay, what I'm about to say next is important, okay? So everyone in the chat, make sure you're listening right now. Candice Cooley said in this new interview, there is not a single dodgy person, pedo, in Lucin, okay? Neither a convicted one in Montello, okay? If you don't quite understand my wording, I'm just wording it in a certain way because I know YouTube does not like certain key words, okay? So we're talking about criminal acts which involves a person, I guess adult age, doing inappropriate stuff to younger people. Mainly physical, but I guess it can also be psychological at times, or maybe some kind of verbal stuff as well. You know what I'm talking about, right? And Candice Cooley said, there is not a single one of those type of people in Lucin or Montello. That is very, you know what I'm saying? What I will say first of all, to an extent I could understand it if she just said Lucin, because Lucin is a ghost town. There's really not many people around, and the only people that are around, yeah, they might have a criminal history, but it's more to do with like violence and attacking people of a similar age as them or roundabout, you know what I'm saying? But applying it to Montello as well, very risky by Candice Cooley to do, considering she's all about facts, being right, not spreading misinformation, criticising people that does that, and yet this is the second time now where Candice Cooley has, from the looks of it, lied to do with information, statistics going on in Montello. The first time when Candice Cooley said Montello is benefiting, they're getting a 500% boost in sales. Montello locals have dispelled and debunked that claim by Candice Cooley, as they live there, they see it, they feel it, they know what's going on. And it's complete opposite, right? So that was one lie by Candice Cooley, not good. The reason why this one here is another lie is because I have looked at actual, news articles online by actual proper news sources and stuff, as you've seen, as you would have researched as well, where it's talked about Montello people being responsible for inappropriate behaviour towards a younger person, right? What I will say most importantly, just to acknowledge one thing, I can't remember exactly when it was now, probably months ago, I did cover one or two articles where it kept talking about a Montello man. A Montello man was done for this, done for that, done for physically harming a younger person, done for inappropriately touching a younger person, but it was in a different county, right? So the individual that committed the crime was born in Montello but was living elsewhere when the crime was committed, right? So I guess you can't really say people convicted in Montello. It was out of Montello, but they were originally born in Montello, right? So I can understand that. But there are the odd small few examples of where, there have been actual Montello locals convicted, right? And I could show screenshots now, but as I said, YouTube can be very restrictive at times when it comes to these topics. I've got my own videos, I've got my own coverage, I've got my own evidence, information, some of the factual stuff, quotes, courts and stuff, talk, cases of this nature, which Candice Cooley is denying regarding Montello. I'll provide links down below to all this stuff, and make sure to watch it so you'll get an idea of what has happened in the past and who is responsible, okay? What I will say is, from research I have done, I've not found much crime-related news in Lucin, or people that live in Lucin committing a crime, especially the inappropriate stuff, right? But I have heard a few different stories here and there within Montello, okay? A loose one, but I will just highlight it, considering that Doug is in relation to Candice Cooley, friends, contacts, so you'd think he must be telling the truth if Candice Cooley approves of him. Even though Candice Cooley, and I'm surprised Doug didn't highlight anything in that talk as well. As we've heard in the past, Doug was talking about, he was exaggerating, probably getting a little too excited, talking about in the past Montello lockdown by police force. They're all coming on in, they're going to do mass arrest. And supposedly it turned out it was just a couple of cops searching for the odd person or two, ex-fireman or something within the community who's been known for inappropriate behaviour towards younger people, you know what I'm saying? And I think they kicked the odd door in and made an arrest. What happened after that, I'm not sure. But that's like an example of those type of people committing those type of crimes in that area, which Candice Cooley says hasn't and never happened. And Doug highlighted it as well in the past. But why did Doug not challenge Candice Cooley in that interview when Candice Cooley said none of that happens there when Doug did cover it in the past? Is it because Doug forgot? Maybe. Is it because it was somehow cleared up between the two with time? I don't know. And how would Candice Cooley know when it's a separate related crime? She wouldn't know about it. She wouldn't be informed about it, nor is she from the area, so she wouldn't be told to begin with. So there shouldn't really be a conversation going on between the two. So it only leave me with the other idea that maybe Doug doesn't want to counter Candice Cooley, doesn't want to stand up to her because it breaks down the barriers. It breaks down that connection they have. And if whether it be Doug benefiting from Candice Cooley, or Doug just in a better situation now, or Doug in favour, safety from the wrath of Candice Cooley down the line, such as within the legacy period, that's why he doesn't want to challenge Candice Cooley. One way of looking at it. I guess another thing what we need to highlight is whether it be both Scott and Troy, or just Troy, the Wadsworths, Troy Wadsworth, Scott Wadsworth, they've been done for some, inappropriate stuff towards younger people in the past. One of them, which I believe was Troy, I'm sure it was Troy, 2003 maybe, inappropriate behaviour to a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, and I think maybe Scott did something as well at one point. You get what I'm saying? It has happened, it has been recorded, they did get convicted. It was mentioned in the news, it was mentioned in articles, looked at it, covered it. Links will be down below in the pinned comment section. Make sure to check them out, because it highlights and proves that Candice Cooley is lying. Now, I can understand that Candice Cooley probably wouldn't know about this stuff because she's not from the area, but by, I guess, guessing and assuming, not exactly the best thing to do. And I guess the other thing to highlight, even if you're not from that area, you can at least research it online. Whilst people can be called out for not doing this, not doing that, or covering this, covering that, but because of distance, location, how would you know? Like, why are you getting yourself involved? And yet, in this little small scale example, a person from the UK knows more about Montello than a person from the US does that's near to Montello. How did one access about it? Just simply, some people reached out, and for other parts, just looking online, and then the results showed up. It's that simple, right? And yet, they didn't do it. So, just leave your thoughts. I mean, I know humans can't be perfect. I know you might not know everything, or you might not have time to access everything. I understand all that, but when someone goes on a bit of a crusade and really words it and strengthens it in the sense of, I don't approve of this, that person over there for doing what they do, spreading this misinformation, it's all about the facts here, this is where all the truth comes from, blah, 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 and yet they mess up themselves. That makes them a hypocrite, calling everyone else out for doing something when they do it themselves, but claiming that they're better. It is a messy situation. Is it the end of the world? No. But could that be one of the examples which throws doubt and a bit of suspicion towards Candice Cooley? Yes. But it doesn't just focus on Candice Cooley. It doesn't just apply to her. It can apply to Kurt Wadsworth for his behaviour, things he's done or things he's not done, which makes people question him, such as not taking the polygraph test, right? Even Don Hately, for how he might have behaved at times. He might have passed this, but why did he lie at the beginning outside of the lie detector test? Okay? Etc., etc., right? So, it just kind of paints Candice Cooley in a negative light. And for the people that do support her and understand and relate, they might not be able to see that, or at least understand that point of view to why other people think different towards her. Of course, you'll get other people that will call out Candice Cooley and be suspicious of her, but that might be in a more inaccurate, exaggerated, irrational way, right? And that's not helpful either. You need to get that balance, right? It needs to be at a certain level. So you've got the accuracy, but you've also got thinking outside of the box, right? Do we move on to the next one? Yes. Doug was then going on about, I guess, calling out pancakes. Doug was also calling out Jim Terry, but it wasn't direct, but from how it's been worded previously and carrying on over, you see the pattern. And that was to do with talking about the watermelon and I think Pepsi can being out there, placed out there to make it look something, but it's really not. And then what was, do you think? The militia, some kind of Neighborhood Watch, which was, as Doug stated, created by the person that talked about it in the first place and worked with somebody else, such as Kurt Wadsworth. You know, you'll be able to catch on maybe quicker for you that have been around and listened to it, right? But basically, Doug was saying that they want to make the case relevant to their points. So they create things, set things in place, create this, suggest that, may even, like, if they're physically there at some point, add things to the scene to make it seem like something else when it's not. Because then it will help them, I guess, create more videos down the line. It might create a better focus, a better angle, but it's away from the truth, which doesn't help. Do I completely agree with what Doug said there? I can't say yes, I can't say no, because I didn't, and I still haven't looked that deep into the supposed planted stuff and sabotaging of the case by others, right? I've not really been focused on that, so I wouldn't know. What I've mainly been doing is trying to keep the case alive and covering my own ideas and concepts within the case and trying to understand how things could have played out and when, and was there anything earlier on that could have impacted the outcome, you know, that sort of stuff. And yeah, here and there we've analysed text and we've tried to make sense of things and highlighting if there's any inaccuracies or contradictions made as well. But, you know, you can only look at so much. And as I said, I'll say it once again, there's a lot of supposed information out there which I've never heard of, and majority of it turns out to be BS. So like when Black Dove was talking about filtering out the confusion and the BS, technically I'd been able to do that, but it wasn't like planned. It was just natural. I just did my own thing. Maybe doing your own thing does avoid all the other unnecessary stuff. Maybe not doing live streams avoids all the other unnecessary stuff. And if you think about it, and I don't know if other people have done, so such as the Shack lady who she might be doing her own thing, right? She's got her own channel, but if there are times, which there have been, where she allows people onto her show, or maybe more to do with she goes on other people's shows, then maybe that puts her, not literally, but in some kind of potential trouble or potential danger. I don't know how you would word it. If viewers can go from one channel to another publicly and get attacked for it by somebody else out there, then I'm sure it can also happen to the actual creators or the actual people in control of some kind of established channel, right? That's the way I see it, at least. So like, if you've got certain channels out there that might be a bit controversial, that might have got in trouble with Candice Cooley at some point, or just simply that Candice Cooley has called certain channels out over time, if you, who's a complete nobody, then associates yourself with one of those channels, literally, and when I say literally, I mean joining in as a panel, as a guest host, laughing, joking, talking, just a bit of drama here and there, but making up once again, kissing each other's bodies all over. I don't know where, probably get a brown face afterwards, depending where you kiss. But what I'm saying is, then you start directly associating with those people. And whilst it might not cause you much trouble at the time, it might then put you on the radar as whoever Candice Cooley is looking into as well, right? So sometimes doing your own thing is for the best, right? I mean, within the Kenny Veach case, it wasn't problematic, right? The actual Kenny Veach family doing whatever, you know, they weren't really associating with the Kenny Veach case anymore. I guess they were moving on, but the odd Veach family member, in a way, did reach out and did appreciate what was being done, right? But there wasn't the same level as drama there, nowhere near. There was people whinging and whining, but it was very independent. It was quite separate, right? It wasn't groups and clumps attacking one another, nothing like that. Was the community smaller? Not really. If you think about it, being realistic, me covering the Kenny Veach case, or someone like Scott Natal, because his was more effective because it was search-based videos, but if I want to apply it to me because it's a bit more relevant to this channel and video, if I upload one video at the time back then, it could get 10,000 views, it could get up to about 100,000 views, could get about 50, 40, 35,000 views, all up and down like that. With the Dylan Brown's case, even with the more successful channels, it might be about 17,000, 10,000. So technically the community internally is bigger within the Dylan Rounds case, but as for casual viewers that just come on in and out, come and go with time and not stick around as much, that number of people, audience, is greater in the Kenny Veach case, okay? Just highlighting that so you get an idea of things and how stuff is structured. But obviously, by doing one's own thing back then, transitioned into this, so that sticking to a certain style of coverage has actually helped, okay? Wasn't planned, wasn't done as an implementation to avoid negative stuff. It just worked, right? I mean, is there any cases you've ever heard of? Any missing people cases or true crime cases where the majority of YouTube channels cooperated with one another, or if not that, just simply did their own things individually and there was no trouble whatsoever, aside from the viewers, but the actual creators, coverage people? Has there ever been a time of something like that where it's gone smooth? List down below if you can think of any of those examples, okay? Right, let's move on to the next point within this interview, key point. Candice Cooley. This one's interesting. Never heard of this before, okay? This actually gives an insight to how Dylan was, you know, minutes, hours before he went missing, okay? You remember previously, and it's not that long ago when we were talking about the weather, and I was suggesting, how did Dylan feel at the time? What was going through his mind? Was he sad? Was he stressed because of the rain? Did he have adrenaline? What? Candice Cooley said in this recent interview that Dylan was etastic, basically excited, happy in a positive way. Whoa, yeah, heightened, right? Maybe it's a bit of adrenaline. Maybe it's because of what he's going to do. Candice Cooley has said in the past that when Dylan would call her or call someone else, if it was just simply raining or a slight weather change, Dylan seemed very enthusiastic, very passionate and kind of excited, right? So maybe the same happened once again. Maybe Dylan, moments away from being able to park the truck in the grain shed, he was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then once it's done, it's a success, right? I guess the only question you could ask yourself is, how would Candice Cooley know how Dylan was at the time, his emotions on Saturday when he made that call? Well, the call was made to the grandmother, Karen Rounds, and then shortly afterwards, or whenever it was, when they did all contact each other, the family members, to try and understand what was going on with Dylan's silence, I'm sure Karen would have passed it on and said, oh, well, the final phone call what I had with Dylan, he was very enthusiastic, he was excited, he said what he was going to do, right? And so on. So I guess that's where Candice Cooley heard it from and then talked about it just recently. But it's the first time I've heard of it. So, you know, at least before Dylan went missing, he was positive. He was in a good mood, right? Maybe with a little bit of adrenaline. He was pumped. He was ready to do what he needed to do. But it also makes you think and feel that Dylan made that call 6:51 a.m. in the morning, supposedly when it was raining or when it just rained beforehand, and yet he was still positive. So that's a good sign. And even though that gate was an obstacle, he was still excited. So he didn't see it too much as a problem. He didn't seem to have anger, aggression within him, so that couldn't have triggered a direct response from Brenner, unless it was more indirect, such as just getting onto the land despite the gate being locked. Ellenberg has said that the gate is a bit flimsy and not that high up, so you could bend it, push it over or something, right? So that's one thing to take in mind. At what point did that excitedness within Dylan leave his body? That's what you got to try and understand. But, you know, it just provides a little bit of an understanding of how Dylan was on the day he went missing. I hope I said that word correctly earlier, beginning with E. It feels like I'm saying it wrong, but there is a certain spelling of it. But, you know, basically excited Dylan was, right? So leave your thoughts down below to what you think about that. Anything else? Candice Cooley then started a bit later in the interview talking about the letter she received, not a handwritten one, but the typed up one, about the people going out there, seeing it for themselves in a similar way to how Dylan did when he did his farming, right? That's how it was worded by Candice Cooley. And this was to do with the letter by the witnesses, the people that went out there camping because they wanted to, right, naturally, and then witnessed Dylan doing the farming later at night on that Friday, 27th of May, 11:30 to 11:45 p.m, supposedly Dylan in the tractor. If you want to know more about that witness map analysis of the location revealed of where these witnesses were at and what they could see and the possible ideas and theories, make sure to check my video out about that. That will be provided down below in the pinned comment section as well. Make sure to check it out, okay? But yeah, Candice Cooley was just referring back to that letter in a positive way, referring back to people that have been out there, both before and after Dawn's disappearance, who did assist, and Candice Cooley was positive and grateful towards them. So that's interesting, right? Because, you know, whilst maybe at times we've seen Candice Cooley calling out some people and being annoyed, frustrated, she has acknowledged others. Maybe that might not sit well with certain people out there. People might start assuming there's biasness or picking and choosing sides. I don't know what to make out of it, but, you know, you can leave your thoughts after, right? We move on to the next piece of notes. And I will say, to be fair, from a 55, 56 minute video, there was quite a few notes to make note of, right? So the next point we talk about, Candice Cooley basically said, we didn't know about, you know, Brenner, what he's capable of, his past history. We didn't know, okay? What I want to know is, if Candice Cooley didn't know of the likes of Brenner and his criminal history, the likes of Don Hately and his criminal history, then how did Candice Cooley know that there was no pedos in Lucin and Montello? That's what I want to know. If you know there aren't a certain type of people in that area that commit that certain type of crime, then you should also be checking at other possible crimes committed by some people. You don't just look at one and think that's all clear, that's all good, we'll move in, right? Kind of like if you were moving into a neighbourhood and you looked at the crime reports for burglaries. Okay, yeah. Let's say there's no burglaries, no crimes like that. Oh, that's all good, we'll just move in. Yeah, but what about on-the-spot muggings, knife attacks, like UK? Maybe that exists. Maybe burglaries inside of the home hasn't occurred in that area, but muggings when walking about, going down a pathway, held at gunpoint, knife point, that has occurred. If you're going to look at one area, you might as well look at it as a whole, just to double check, make sure that it's completely safe, right? Yet that didn't happen with Candice Cooley. Now, the only thing I would say, and it is down to wording and language, sometimes the context is missing, the only other way it would make sense is if, at the time, Candice Cooley had no clue of crime in the area, right? But then, post Dylan's disappearance, ended up researching, maybe, or trying to research, and then found out about it. But if that really was the case and Candice Cooley researched, then what the hell was she researching then? To say that there's no inappropriate, you know, crimes going on within like the likes of Montello. If you type in certain wording and the name of the place, it comes up with that stuff, right? And, you know, if you're really involved in the case, you're more than likely to come across it, and yet she didn't. So I don't think that could really excuse her in that sense. And where did she get that information from, that none of that has happened? Did she just make it up, or did someone pass it on to her? That's why I'm still leaning back on the point of, you didn't know about Brenner, but you did know about this inappropriate stuff going on in the area and elsewhere not existing. Don't understand that. Doesn't make sense. That is a bit dodgy, okay? Let me know your thoughts to what you think about that. Next point. Fast forwarding on, and this was more to do with Doug talking about Candice Cooley, right? And to roughly word it, Doug was like, oh yeah, and yeah, the people in the past that were on my show and tried convincing me that you're bad people. You know, from back then, I already knew you weren't that bad. Well, if Doug already knew that at the time, then why did he associate himself with those type of people that were trying to arguably brainwash him and convince him that Candice Cooley is a bad person? Is it because Doug was listening to all sides of the story, or was he just shifting with a certain movement, a certain affiliation at the time with certain people to benefit to the best of his ability? And then once it was going downhill or it backfired, then moved on to a different group of people, a different set. You see what I'm saying? We have seen it at times, allegiances pledged, people on the sinking ship, the Titanic, no pun intended, ending up jumping ship and moving on to the next channel, right? I don't know if it happened exactly, but I'm sure the times of Pancake's downfall in the past where people were screwing him over, backstabbing him, ended up running away onto Jim Terry's channel, and it might have happened in recent time. Fast forward, the people that ran away escaped from Jim Terry's channel and returned back to Pancake's channel like nothing went on. And whilst most of it has been forgotten, I guess some of the individuals have not been and still are criticised by the likes of Pancakes. Messy, isn't it? Have I witnessed it? Have I experienced it? No. I mean, most of the people that have come to this channel have stayed and/or come and then spread about onto other channels in between naturally. There's not really been what's been experienced elsewhere, right? Could it ever happen? Yeah, of course. But I've already got past experience, okay, with this stuff. It happened in the Kenny Veach case where there was a number of people, right? And some of them decided to create slander towards me, paint me in a negative way, which was not true. And then a few of the other viewers that watch along started listening to those channels and then turning on me. So they were cancer, okay? They dispelled with time. They just faded into a desolate, meaningless place, okay? But it's not really happened since, but it has happened in the past, so I'm aware of it. Did they come crawling back? No. But what I will say is, and it's not to do with affiliating with another channel, like how people in this case community have experienced, like Pancakes, right? I've had it where people have had a gay obsession with me, right? Some kind of obsession, constantly criticising, constantly complaining, criticise, complain, whinge, whine, the lot. And then down the line, they've ended up saying, we're a big supporter of your channel, Raf. We really do appreciate what you're doing. Thank you, Master. And it's like, there we go. There was once a Scottish individual, a Scottish individual that was kind of criticising here and there. And then at one point, they were like pissing about. And then I just said, oh yeah, we'll make movements. And he's like, oh, what a good boy you are, moving on. And it's like, do you want to jump out the window as well? And then they were like, oh, no, please don't do that, please don't do that. That typical suicide type situation scenario thing. And of course, that psychological warfare ended up altering the mindset of an individual, which is typical human test subjects at the end of the day. And they were positive after that, which I appreciate. It's good of them at the time to be positive and to, I guess, watch the videos. So that was good. But it was just interesting beforehand how they were. And then there was another group of people, some couple from the UK. Some couple from the UK complaining, whinging, saying, Raf, you need to get psychological help. You need help right now. And it's like, oh, here we go, do that typical mental health bandwagon card where if you say a few different things or you act a little bit different, the whole bandwagon like suffocates you, labels you drugged up to shut up, etc. I've covered it all before on my channel, all back in the past, all under control. I know exactly what's going on and what people are trying to do. Same with the power control situation, are the same people to fix you, with the same people to break you to begin with. You know, I'm aware of it all, the self-manipulative minimalization, the external manipulative minimalization to play down the importance of stuff, whilst also playing their own abilities or achievements down to it, drum up more positivity around, so then it collects to them. They know they've done well, but they want to portray it as they've not, so then more people are positive. Yeah, I've heard it all, okay? I've done extensive analysis of human behavior for like 8-9 years now, okay? So it's just more instinct nowadays. But yeah, that couple back then complaining, then with time, we're your biggest supporters. And it's like, oh, here we go again, here we go again. I mean, it would have been, and I don't know if it will, because we've got important stuff to do with Dylan Rounds at this moment in time. Obviously, those videos, those map analysis, they need to be locked on too, okay? They will be focused on. Sure, there's other stuff here and there, other loose videos, other fun videos, but this is important. This will be covered. This will be locked on, right? Just how it is. But, you know, if I covered that, was it Nicole Bully case, because it's from the UK, because of how I think, because of how people have been with me with time, especially in real life, it'd be interesting to see how, not the UK people, the odd UK people in the chat right now or in recent time, they're good, but the majority, the others out there in its own country, would they turn on me, yes or no? And you might think, how? It's hard to explain. Different realities, okay? Just understand that. I've applied it on smaller observational scales, like with TikTok, because TikTok is more designated to the location of where you're at by country. Your videos will apply more to the people in that country rather than further afar, okay? And I have received more resistance, more toxicity on TikTok by different age ranges and different genders, don't worry. And it was mainly people from the UK. So there you go. But let's just focus on Dylan Rounds for now. This is the thing, I can lock onto that, I can lock onto this, but I can return back to what I was going to talk about without forgetting, okay? So if we continue on, Doug, the way he was wording it, it was as if he was like trying to wiggle his way out. You know, yeah, I might have done videos in the past, yeah, I might have covered you in a negative light, but you know, I always knew you were a good person, I always knew you were innocent. Don't try doing that, right? You know exactly what's going on there, like that type of behaviour. But yeah, let's just move on to the next point. Candice Cooley, the way she worded it is kind of roughly quoting it. Candice Cooley said, everything posted on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page is true. That's a strong, bold claim to make, isn't it? I'm sure. And I'm sure that when I have done past videos, when covering post on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page, as I have documented it, and Tom Evans can add his own opinions on because he would have seen them. I'm sure there's been times where I got confused and/or noticed heavy contradictions made, maybe through misunderstanding of language, poor language used, but there's definitely been contradictions. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like how Candice Cooley, the last one I remember of, and it's the most recent one, where she was calling out saying, nobody else out there online or like on YouTube or just out there groups have done, have helped, have solved, have tried made sense of the case. No one has. And then people then started questioning, well, what about Mob Crew Chris? What about Heavy D? And then Candice Cooley said, well, yeah, those people. But it's like, that's not how you worded it in your original statement. This is what I mean. Little contradictions there. Might be just simple mistakes, but when it builds and builds and builds, it becomes a bit more serious, okay? And I'm sure you will remember other examples as well further on, okay? So let's just move on to the next one. Candice Cooley then went on to say, I just can't fathom how other families out there are being attacked by these trolls and other accounts out there. I mean, where do you begin with? The reason why some will attack families when it's to do with a case, a missing person one, or crime like that, true crime mysteries, is because hasn't there always been some kind of statement going about that the people that have gone missing, the ones most likely responsible, are the ones that know of that missing person or knew of that person before the person went missing, such as family members, friends, etc. That's why it tends to be those are the people that tend to be involved in some way. Does that apply to the Dylan Rounds case? At some point, people felt that way, such as the parents being responsible for taking out Dylan, some kind of hired hit contract killer type thing, what people have, theorised and come up with a conspiracy. But then, if it is truly Brenner and only Brenner alone, technically Brenner knows Dylan, right? They at least know each other. Maybe not exactly friends, but they know each other. And I said that original statement going, the people that go missing in this world tend to be, the ones responsible tend to be people that know of that missing person originally. So whether it be a grudge, some kind of outstanding claim, tension building, on the spot, heightened emotions, disagreement, whatever, falling out can happen. But that's one of the reasons maybe at the beginning why people may attack families, because they're being very ultra suspicious and thinking that, family's responsible because that's how the saying goes, so they must be responsible, which isn't always the case, but I guess people try and drill it home and then pin it on some. Maybe others may have attacked families because they followed like sheep. If you've got a certain channel which controls the audience, or the audience just simply look up and listen and nod their head to everything that's said to them, if that channel says, right, go after that person, then everyone does. So that could be another way. Misguided, indoctrinated, brainwashed, minions sent out to attack, bitch boys sent out to spread stuff, etc. That can happen as well. Is there any other possibilities? Well, if it was to try and suit their own narrative and put a spin on it, that's why they might attack family. Maybe the family isn't responsible in a general situation, but this creator, this media coverage group or person in real life or just online wants to put a spin on it so it can fit their story, their perspective, and then they can drill it home, drag it out and benefit that way possibly. But because of those actions and those methods, which are quite clearly seen as an attack, they don't really get anywhere and it ends up backfiring down the line, right? As we've got to be careful with wording, and as we've seen obviously, and more in this case because Candice Cooley has highlighted it, that not really worked out, has it, with the wording and behaviour. People have clearly failed because they've ended up just going on a pure witch hunt attack. And I think maybe just a focus, like drilled on just one person rather than several. Now, Candice Cooley was talking about it as a whole, families out there of different cases. But, if it happens in one community, then it will happen in another, because you just see these patterns with humans, right? But let's just move on to the next point. I think adding on from that and some of the stuff mentioned above, Doug talked about saying how he's an online personality. He has a bigger following. He is a public figure in comparison to Candice Cooley. And Candice Cooley was kind of like nodding her head thinking, yeah. But if Doug is an online personality, a YouTuber, and you refer back to what Candice Cooley referred to as online personalities, she wasn't too pleased with them. She called them out. And when someone said, what about Heavy D and his YouTube videos? I think Jazz Girlson's excuse was, well, he's more considered as a TV personality. TV personality is better than an online YouTube personality. Does Candice Cooley agree with that statement by Jazz Girlson? Because if so, then why is she associating herself with Doug, who isn't a TV personality then? Whether it's to do with picking and choosing sides or just poor use of language. That's what can cause the blurriness in between what's what, right? So there is that. Candice Cooley. This was an interesting part, and I think it does tie on a bit later with another point made. So just try and make sense of it, like as a rough quote. Candice Cooley said, there is a situation in which something needs to happen. And in that process, we need to await on the next decision. We're going to let what's currently going to happen, this situation, we're going to let happen for the sake of Dylan. That sounds somewhat positive. Why do the family need to wait? And why do they need to plan their next step ahead? Is it directly to do with finding Dylan, or is it to do with getting justice and getting Brenner sent down? You know, from the way it's been worded with time, they want to be able to find Dylan before Brenner truly gets sent down. So there's pure justice and it's done properly and they've got all the evidence together. So what else could there be in between in which there are plans ahead? Could it be more to do with searching for Dylan? Maybe not directly finding him at this moment in time, but looking elsewhere and plans to do with that? Or is it to do with plans of potential new evidence coming on in? It was vaguely worded, but it seems like there is something formal taking place with maybe authorities. And that's why Candice Cooley has to be patient, right? So that's interesting. We do talk about it again a bit later on, so make sure to stick around and it might hint at something, okay? Next thing, just a little observation I noticed. The likes, I don't know if it was directly Jim Terry or Mr. X. One or the other, if not both, did criticise Doug's channel, or more so criticise Candice Cooley for not doing live call-ins. And whilst I can kind of understand that, that's not happened, that's what they like, that method. If you look on Doug's live stream interviews, and in addition, whilst Mr. X and Jim Terry have called out Doug's as pre-recorded live streams, they're not, because when that live interview was going on at the time, there was people posting comments and then they were showing up on the screen as well as a live stream format. And as I said, if you're using StreamYard and you're doing a interview at the same time and you're hosting it on YouTube live, cross connections, so people are commenting in the chat as well as commenting on StreamYard, and it works two ways. I would know because I did do an interview in the past, right, with casual conversations with Gloria and Eileen when it's to do with the Kenny Veach case, which was 1 hour 46 minutes, right? That's how that process was. StreamYard, join, live stream it, and mirror it onto YouTube at the same time, and then afterwards then upload it to YouTube or make changes or something. And people can comment in between and answer questions. That's how it was then, and that's what I see with Doug's, right? So Doug does allow people to call in, well, not call in, but text in with a question. Yeah, it's not verbal, but you're still getting a bit of a live interaction. And if people are strong about answering or wanting a certain question answered, then they can, and they should. So that kind of just dispels that. It's just a little observation, okay? Next point, Candice Cooley, roughly quoted, "No one's been at the farm recently, besides her and Justin. No one else." And she said, why? Well, someone said why, and she said, because of the snow. It's that bad out there, no one can get to the farm, or no one would want to bother going to the farm in that weather, right? I can understand that. I did see an article somewhere to do with the weather. Maybe try and read it out in the next video. Don't know if it's still, I don't know. It's kind of up to date, maybe a couple of days ago. Guess there's no harm in reading it. It's only a small little article, but we'll get into that another time. But, I mean, you would have seen it by the odd Montello local when they provided the odd photo of, it was more to do with Montello though, but the snow, the environment, eventually reaching over into Lucin. Right, so yeah, in a way it kind of delays searches, but whilst it may have delayed searches, it didn't stop the pond being dug up, so some action was taken. And it makes you think, out of all this time, why did they choose to do it then and not earlier on? And in addition, if no one else has been to the farm since and that proper searches have not taken place in recent time due to the weather, as Candice Cooley described, then why were they so passionate and determined against all odds to go to the pond and have it dug up, despite the weather? They must have had a really strong impulse to think, right, we can't search, but we have to. And we need to select this location, the pond. That's what I'm thinking. Interesting. Let me know your thoughts to what you think about that. And then tying on, which was interesting, Candice Cooley said, stay off the property. The grain shed, the farm, stay off it. And she said, we need to let the things happen. Okay? That's where it kind of made me think, what do we need to let happen? What things? And if you think about it, if you refer back to earlier where Candice Cooley said, there is a situation that needs to happen and we need to wait for the next decision and we need to let what's going on right now happen. And then later on in that interview, what I just read there, stay off the property, we need to let things happen. I think there's a correlation. I think there's a link between those two things. Whatever is going on in the background applies to the farm or grain shed. And that's why they don't want people over there, because it might ruin evidence. And it would have made more sense that in the past, in the early days, no one go there. It's a fresh scene. We don't want to disturb anything. But saying it now, they must have found something. Maybe the people that might cause disruption don't know of this location, but the ones who are in on it, like the authorities and maybe Candice Cooley, they have an idea of what needs to be looked at next. And they just don't want any other people getting in the way. Maybe to that extent of, even if people were present and not causing trouble, they just don't want people present there to see what's going on, because then it might encourage them to return back to that spot another time, another day when the others aren't there, the actual family or the police, I guess. So is this like really direct, immediate action in locating and pinpointing Dylan? Maybe not, but it seems as if whatever's going on in the background also applies to out there in Lucin. So I guess unfinished business. And I don't just mean the obvious, we need to try and find Dylan, but we need to pinpoint a certain location, maybe nearby, which could hold Dylan possibly. That's how I interpret it, okay? Anything else? Candice Cooley saying, this is new information, a new update, which is interesting. Candice Cooley said the grain shed is owned by a new landowner. There is a new landowner present who owns the grain shed now. Who is it? Don't know. Their name? No clue. Is it someone we've heard of previously? Ed Harshberger, John Sheldon? No idea. Do any of you know? In the past, I've heard it to do with John Sheldon and Ed Harshberger. But if there's a new landowner, why is that the case? Where have the other two gone? If I'm correct in saying, I'm sure in the chat recently people said, was it Weezer, that they've not seen Ed Harshberger in recent time, that he's been away from Montello, he's been elsewhere living. Am I correct in saying that? Could that tie in? The likes of Doug himself, not Doug, the likes of Don Haley going off his own way, moving elsewhere. All these people just dispersing all of a sudden. Why is that? And I know people applied it to Ty Corbin as well. Oh, Ty Corbin's gone quiet now. They're all fading away. Isn't that odd? But to note, Ty Corbin has returned back from the looks of it, so we'll see what that's all about later. As said, if you've just joined, welcome. Later on in this video, we will be taking a look at Ty Corbin's comment and just see what's being said, okay? So just make sure to stick around. So yeah, new property owner. That's interesting, isn't it? And this is the thing, Candice Cooley said that this new landowner will press charges towards anyone that trespasses on the land from now on, I guess. Has anyone been there since? No. Would Pancakes go back there? No. I think it was like a one-time visit, or maybe only two-time visit. I don't think anyone else would go back there. Is it because they're smart and they don't want to get in trouble? No, it's not because of that. It's just because they've been there, they've done it, they've recorded it, they've got an idea of what the area looks like. Unless there was a new discovery, or there was new activity, or there was another event or crime or something dodgy going on in the area, then it might entice people to go back, but then that would mean they might get in trouble. But the one thing I want to question is, if there is a new landowner, I guess you're in contact with Candice Cooley, because Candice Cooley said that the landowner allows her and the family to go on there and explore, but no one else. How would this landowner know about people trespassing on the land when majority of the landowners out there don't even live out there? Is it because they're going to start implementing cameras, CCTV, surveillance, and then that can capture anyone seen trespassing, and then the landowner will know about it and then can press charges? That's the only thing I can think of, because you can't rely on witnesses because there's not really anyone out there. Not now. So let me know your thoughts behind that. And only implementing cameras now when it could have been used back then, I'm sure that would probably trigger Jim Terry, wouldn't it? You know, oh, what a mess. But, you know, that's just the way it is. Is there anything else? No, we just move on to the next few notes, okay? It's just like little bullet points, that's all it is. But there's so much depth behind these little bullet points, just these little prompts, these little words, right? So the next question that actually popped in, and this was by an actual viewer, it was by Not For You, the person we analysed last night, supposedly Kurt Wadsworth's daughter. It's not really been contested since, but that account did talk in third person at one point, but then associated themselves as "we are innocent," associating them with the Wadsworths. So you interpret it however you want, but they did leave a question saying, is it still going to go ahead that on the 17th we will find out about stuff within the case? And Candice Cooley replied saying, what's that, a Sunday, or what day is that? Oh, I don't think anything would happen on that day. Now, what day is it today? It's Friday, of course. I'm not that stupid. Take in mind time zone difference as well. It's the 17th today. It's the 18th tomorrow, my birthday. So as for today, you'd be expecting something to happen, right? To do with this Dylan Brown situation. The interview took place last night, if I'm correct in saying. Yeah. Take in mind time zone difference. Last night, yesterday. So that would have been the day before the 17th. Okay? So that's why that question was asked. Will anything happen today, later on, tonight? I don't know. And even if it did, it probably wouldn't be talked about on the same day. There might be a few days of silence before things are processed or talked about. But Candice Cooley didn't really say anything. She just said, oh, we don't really have a particular day exact of what's going to happen. She just said something about, we said about like within the first 2 or 3 weeks of February, we'd find out about stuff, and that's about it. But that there is stuff going on at the moment, and there have been setbacks in between, but also some progress made. And that's all she said. So she was very vague, and yet it seemed like it was all being hyped up previously. And there was a level of certainty of, we will find out. We will likely get something out of the next week or two. And now it's like, oh, don't really know. I mean, if they can't say stuff, I understand that. You know, you can't release everything, but it'd just be easier to say, unfortunately, we wanted to release information, we wanted to inform you, but due to request made by authority, we just cannot release it at this moment in time. Even that would have been better, right? The only other thing I can think of is the police have had a change of heart, or whoever, and decided not to tell Candice Cooley stuff once again. Delay it, maybe. It's the only other thing I can think of. But, you know, let me know, are you disappointed by that maybe not much will happen on the 17th, or were you expecting that? List your thoughts. We could do a poll now. We haven't really done a poll this time around, but we'll do one now. Are you surprised, not surprised, disappointed? Feel free to vote right now, okay? Next point, and this is where it gets a little bit messy, okay? Some talk about Dylan Rounds being a vegan, marijuana farm, growing drugs or something. Like, Doug was confused, never heard of that before. Candice Cooley was clearing up, saying it's a load of BS. that the photos presented claiming this is Dylan growing drugs was a completely different person that looked completely different, of course, obvious. But there was a TikTok page as well called Dylan, maybe someone imitating Dylan Rounds, and the post being made saying, oh look, that's Dylan planting this, planting that, post disappearance, which made no sense. Guess it's people doing it for attention, or it could just so happen to be someone called Dylan doing farming, which would be a bit awkward. But as for that claim about Dylan being a vegan, running away to do with drugs, growing his own farm, I have heard about that in the past, okay? And some of you have seen it yourself. Who can I think of on the spot who's actually heard of it? Maria, you've seen it in a past video. I think it might have been a live video premiere in the live chat where the comment was posted. Was it all by the same person, the same account? I can't remember that, okay? This account that posted it, which Doug showed as a screenshot, was by Kelly or Kelly. Maybe I've heard of that name before. It could obviously be a fake account, someone pretending to be a woman when it's actually a male. We've seen it all before. We see it in recent time with certain channels and getting onto a panel, pretend to be someone else, and then you get onto it without being kicked. Yeah, seen it all before, right? But I saw it in the past. I read it, I analysed it, and just the way it was worded, the language, the structuring, the points, it just sounded like another Kenny Veach wild theory claim, but turned as a fact. Saying, oh yeah, I know what happened to him. Yeah, he ran away. He decided to start a new life, start growing all nice green fairy stuff, and yeah, lots of fun, yeah. No. You could tell it was a waste of time and it was just a load of rubbish, right? And it's only just come to the surface now, or maybe with some channels, but it's been around for some time, Doug, okay? Some of that BS. You know, not much more can be said. Doug was blaming it on Jim, Terry and Ty Corbin for creating these alt accounts and posting that stuff. Is that the truth? I don't know. Would it surprise me? Not really. But I'm sure people have said in recent time there's been a falling out between Jim, Terry and Ty Corbin. This is the problem. At one point, Ty Corbin may have been Jim Terry's cheerleader, then he wasn't, then he was, then he wasn't. And it's like, my God. Like, no wonder why there's trust issues, because it's so back and forth. It's like 1 minute you want to be gay, next minute you want to kiss a dog, next minute you want to ride a turtle, and then now you want to start putting your hand in a whale's mouth and fiddling around with its tongue. I mean, where are we going, you know? This is the problem. Next point, let's move on to the next point mentioned by Candice Cooley. She said, I know Dylan, I knew something was wrong. And this was to do with at the time, right? I don't know what the question was, but Candice Cooley just brought it up. Does Candice Cooley really know Dylan? To an extent, yes, of course. Yeah, it's family, mother, she'll know. The bit about saying, I knew something was wrong. People could question this. People could like say, yeah, but are you sure, Candice Cooley? How would you know if you're not actually there? Maybe Dylan has changed his ways. Maybe Dylan has his own secrets, etc., etc., etc. But, you know, if you see a certain level and pattern of behaviour over time, and that follows on with the person, wherever they go in the world or wherever, you know, that can still remain. They can change their ways, that can happen as well, but there might be some things that remain within them. And if they don't do it, then it seems odd. So the example would be calling back. Okay, Candice Cooley acknowledged that Dylan wouldn't always be on the phone that long. He might suddenly put the phone down because he's got to go off and do other things. That could be interpreted as rude by other people, but the family understood and knew why he did what he did, right? That wasn't abnormal, and he did that over and over again. And maybe the parts about him saying, right, I'm gonna do this, right, bye, I'll call you back later. And then that's what he would do. But because on this occasion, he didn't, and it was just pure silence, obviously that would have alerted a bit of questioning and suspicion, because when there is an abrupt change or an abrupt halt to certain behaviour and attitude, that's when there is a bit of worry and it kicks in. And the key thing, what Candice Cooley mentioned in that interview, was that she reached out to the other family members. She reached out to Justin, reached out to the grandparents, and, you know, they all were in consensus that something was very wrong and it wasn't a normal situation. It was a serious problem. Because there was a consensus of differing people who all think independently but all came to the same conclusion, there's a little bit more reliability within it, right? Well, not reliability, there's more validity in that, in those observations, those opinions, right? So that's a positive, right? Because when all the talk is about Candice Cooley, what she says, what she says, what she says, that's all we hear, right? We don't always hear it from the other people. But for Candice Cooley to point out, saying that other people in the family also said this and also said that and thought the same way, that's a positive. I know you could still say it's still not enough. You want to actually hear it from the horse's mouth. You want to hear it from the actual person and not what some advocate or what some personal representative is saying of that individual. But it's better than nothing, right? And all I would say is, might not be the best, but if you really wanted to see interview footage of Justin Rounds or interview footage of the grandparents, you'd probably have to watch that Dylan Rounds documentary, even if you didn't really like the idea of it or you didn't really want to. If you want to hear it from the other family members, I guess that's the only other way you're going to hear about it, right? Because, you know, Justin hasn't really done any interviews outside of it. Grandparents haven't done any at all. So, you know, if that's the only method, documentary, then I guess that's what you got to do. But, yeah. Now, let's move on to another key point, which was very interesting. Basing it off the theme that, as we've heard, despite the reward money being increased with time from 20 to 50 to 100,000, now to 200,000, and yet it's not yielded any more people coming on out, kind of like revealing information or confessing that they're responsible directly or indirectly, that they know something but they've been hiding it. None of that's happened, and I guess people in the chat can agree with that. But Candice Cooley did say that whilst things weird and wacky stuff happened in the past, such as that Mexican abduction thing and people wanting some kind of ransom money at some point for Dylan, which turned out to be fake, Candice Cooley said there was another thing that happened in, I guess, more recent time. A person from North Carolina that sent a big envelope to, I guess, Candice Cooley and her family, saying that the case has been solved or wanting attention to be drawn to this envelope which could solve the case. And it was like all done in such a serious way, but it was a load of BS. That's interesting. You know, considering we've not really heard anything in recent time, and yet that's happened in the background, it does make you think, doesn't it, right? Bit weird. You know, you got these individuals sending stuff out to people. What next? I mean, like viewers have said they've been attacked here and there by people, or they've been stalked, or people have been in the area and they've had to try and keep a low profile or something, and yet the actual Dylan Rounds family are being targeted as well. Getting a bit messy, right? But that's what I mean. Maybe if you're in a certain country or in a certain proximity to others or the case itself, it does make you more of a target. So it is unfortunate. Maybe covering the Nicole Bully case, it would make me a target. People might come after me, you know. You got to think ahead, just in case. But yeah, let's move on to the next point. Candice Cooley saying, we want an ending. Basically, we want Dylan to be found. Talk about like interviews that need to be done once Dylan's found, talking about media outlets and stuff and news outlets that want to interview her. And as she said previously, she wants to hold it off and stuff. But she was like saying how, like on the, I think, Applying It to the East Idaho News Channel, that once information can be released, she will do it for sure. She will definitely release that information, right? And it sounded like it was being worded as, once Dylan is found, then the information will be released. And I don't know if it was just me, how I internalized it, or no, not internalized it, how I interpreted it at the time, but it felt like that whenever the next update comes, it will be about Dylan being found. That's how I interpreted it, but I don't think that might be the case. But let me know in the chat if you heard it the same way. If not, state it, but just let me know. Did it sound like it? Like, if there are things going on in the background, that's a positive. Doesn't always mean to say that it's like near completion, but with the consistency and the quietness, and then reading in between the lines where Candice Cooley said, we need to wait for now until the next decision is to be made. We need to let whatever's going on happen for the sake of Dylan. That must mean more direct to Dylan, right? And that as soon as we can release information, we will do so. All said within the same interview. It was like, there is a process and there is an order of what to do and what to do next. So that's probably what made me think that the next interview could be quite big. But with that uncertainty of the 17th, that maybe nothing will happen today. And Candice Cooley kind of been like that. It's like, maybe it could be a bit of a letdown. It could be a bit underwhelming. That something will happen eventually, but like if it said, right, something's going to come out in a few weeks' time, it's like, but really? Is it though? Or is it just yet more? Okay. Anything else? Yeah, Candice Cooley just briefly started talking about she's going to debunk the donations, I guess the pages, the channels, the YouTubers that are creating donation pages and stuff. And it's going to be a part of Dylan's legacy, right? And she said that'll be launched next month, mid-March or so. Yeah, mid-March. Does that tie in with the documentary? No, I think the documentary was in April, I'm sure. That's probably why she said she needs to get things in between mid-March before it's too late or something. And she also said that if Dylan, because she still says she's got a little bit of hope within, if Dylan was found like now, tomorrow, or in between this legacy, found alive, then she will still continue the legacy. That could make people a little bit confused, right? You think of legacy, honouring someone who's no longer here. That's one way of looking at it. But this legacy doesn't have to be all about Dylan's death, but how just the case in general, as a missing person case or a murder missing person case, whichever one you want to interpret it as, how it was handled, how it was dealt with, the positives, the negatives, how it can impact other people, relating to other families out there with similar situations, explaining what to do, what not to do, how to avoid this, how to avoid that, how to fix a problem, that type of awareness, a new campaign put in place and talking about that. But I guess that's where the section of going after certain people that have covered the case in the wrong way or maybe trespassed on the land, that's where those people start getting called out as well. So as we said, Dylan found or not, at some point it seems as if there might be repercussions down the line, but it seems as if even though Dylan has not been found yet, there are things set in place but for the future. So it seems as if there is a time period in between in which other stuff needs to happen before other things follow or later things follow. So it's as if maybe they've got like a rough estimation or an idea of the time frame of where and when Dylan can be found, and that's why this legacy is pushed or in mid-March. That's one way of looking at it. I guess we'll see how time tells, right? But hopefully you are able to internalize all that. If you do have any additional questions, any confusion, any points, feel free to list it down below in the comment section. If you have, if you noticed any slip-ups, any contradictions or lies by Candice Cooley, make sure to list it down below as well in the comment section, okay? We're not done yet, because what we need to do now briefly is go on YouTube and check out Ty Corbin's return, okay? And see what he's got to say, at least on my channel. Right, so here we go. You see the comment there by Ty Corbin. I think first of all, it's important to confirm that it is the real Ty Corbin. So let's just click on his profile for a second. There you go, 856 subscribers. That's what I've seen before. What's this one? Warlike Wrath, watch Johnny Yarborough's show from last night. Lance is now exposed. Okay, that It's to do with in the past. Yeah, that's to do with a past comment, okay, from what I remember. Because I heard recently, I think it was from Jim Terry's mouth, that Ty Corbin has been laying low since because Lance Kelly was interviewed by Jim Terry in recent time. I think they were in a hotel or something and they were like talking with one another, but I don't think they were in the same hotel, but they were doing a live stream interview. And I guess Lance may have called out Ty Corbin on some things, and then after that, Ty Corbin went quiet. But then just in recent time, I think it was mentioned that on one of Johnny Yarborough's live streams, recent ones, more up to date, also known as Gay Sloth, did a live stream and Ty Corbin popped in and did a call in or something, right? So just like a little backstory, but whatever's going on. There you go, Ty Corbin. You see, there's his videos. As you can see, 3 weeks ago he last uploaded, so he's been quiet since. So you get an idea. Let's see what Ty Corbin says. Ty Corbin says, Michael Lee Irma, which is salty pancakes, is a tourist in Montello and Wells, Nevada. The locals have had it with his ass. Come out now, salty shitcakes. We want to talk to you about why you have accused so many with absolutely no evidence. Okay, so once again, we're getting this drama, we're getting this call-outs. Has Pancakes seen this? Has he responded yet? I don't know. When will Ty Corbin show up? Maybe he shows up tonight. Maybe he's already in the chat right now. Maybe there's already tension. Maybe time will tell, of course. But, you know, whilst there is supposed movement going on in the Dylan Rounds case, there's also movement going on within the community. May not always be for the good reasons, but, you know, kind of like it is what it is. So, yeah, let me know what you think about Ty Corbin and his comment here. And also take in mind that Michael Lee Irma, arguably public information now because it's plastered all over the place, but also more for provenance, so you can't be criticised or complained at or done for. Salty Pancakes himself once, and I don't know if it's still up, but at one point publicly revealed his full name, like how it is here, and also his address to where he lives. And of course, when I covered it in a past video to do with some drama and stuff, I excluded that bit of information, okay? Just covering my own back, so there is awareness, and it's all in place, okay? Right, so I think that concludes this video. As I said, leave comments down below, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. That's it for now. Goodbye and good night for now.